Hi, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. I always get asked questions about reverbs and delays and effects that I use when I'm recording these videos. Now, I tend to like delays and reverbs, and I use them for productions, for these sort of YouTube videos as well, and live. Now, for me, there's certain rules and tips that I think I apply to pretty much all of my reverb and delay choices. So what I thought I'd do in today's video is to show you how I use reverb, and hopefully that might help people that don't really understand reverbs and delays and allow you then to use reverb and delay in your live use and your productions. Now, first of all, let me give you my clean tone. I'm going to be using this TWS 2864S amplifier over here. It is an absolutely fantastic sounding, sort of clean Vox AC30, sort of chimey amp, and it sounds like this. Now, certain amplifiers don't really need a lot of reverb, and this is one of them, as it's quite hi-fi sounding. Now, I'm also going to be using this Valiant Mercury guitar for this video as well, as it covers humbucker and single coil duties and sounds awesome. Now, today I'm going to be using reverb and delay plugins, but the principle still applies whether you're using pedals, plugins, or a multi-effects unit, something like the Boss GT1000 or the GX100, or even something like the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. All the same principles apply because they more or less have all the same sort of controls on the reverbs and delays. So as I said, here is my clean sound. Now, if I'm using reverb and delay on my guitar tone, pretty much 100% of the time, I'm going to be having the delay the first in the chain, so the delay before the reverb. So let's start with the delay. Now, today I'm going to be using ECHOBOY JNR, which is by Soundtoys. Again, all of these controls you'll find on any sort of delay unit, whether you're using pedals or multi-effects units or even plugins. Now, the way that I like to set my delay is normally about 400 milliseconds. So let's, actually, can we type that in here? No, of course we can't. So there, 394 milliseconds is absolutely fine, but around 400 milliseconds. Now, if I bring the mix up of that delay, it sounds like this. One of the reasons why I use that 400 millisecond delay is because I grew up in the 80s, and The Edge from U2, all of those sort of U2 songs, With Without You, etc., all used around about a 400 millisecond delay, which is a classic sort of dotted eighth note delay around that sort of tempo. And it sounds like this. And songs like this. Now, feedback is exactly the same as repeats. So this is the amount of delay repeats that come after the initial guitar strike. So for instance, now I quite like that. I tend to have roughly around sort of 5 or 6 repeats. Now, for me, the mix is too high. I've just got it that high so you guys can hear exactly how many repeats and how the delay sounds. But we'll deal with that in a minute. The next thing that I always deal with is the high and the low cut. High cut and low cut can also be called low pass and high pass. It does get confusing sometimes, but basically what we're doing is reducing the top frequencies and the bottom frequencies. What you want to do with delay is just to get them away from the guitar tone and to let them sit in the mix a little bit better, is to reduce the high frequencies and the low frequencies of the delays. So as you can hear, my guitar is pretty much full frequency. It's going up to about sort of 7 to 10K. Now, what I want to do with those delays is to bring the frequencies away from the guitar. So I'm going to bring the high cut here back. And normally I'd like to start cutting off my delays around about sort of 2 to 3K. So now you'll hear that my delays are a lot darker. And what I also want to do is to reduce the low cut, which is also called high pass sometimes. So what we're doing is, as opposed to it being full frequency, we're reducing the frequency band. So we've got less lows and less highs. So there's my basic delay tone. Now what I like to do is to have my mix all the way back. So I'm reducing the amount of the delay and letting more of the dry signal, the guitar, come through. Now the way that I like to use delays as a whole is the delays to be really in the background. So it's almost like if I was playing a chord and just strumming lightly, you wouldn't really hear the delays over the guitar. And what they're doing is just fattening up the guitar tone. So there's the basic delay. Now the delays are going to be going into the reverb. So let's turn on this reverb here. Now what I'm going to be using for this is a UAD plugin. This is EMT 140. This is a plate reverb. Plate reverbs tend to be quite a bright sounding reverb, but they tend to cover quite a lot of genres, from sort of vintage stuff, as plate reverbs were invented, I guess, back in the 50s, I guess, and they're still used today. So you can use them over a wide variety of genres and they sound great in a mix. So if I turn the delays off and we just listen to the reverb, it sounds like this. With reverb, for me, the golden rule is to bring the reverb down to about 2 seconds. And we do that by bringing down this control here. Now, again, you see this on lots of pedals and lots of multi-effects units. If you bring the actual reverb time down to 2 seconds, you'll get roughly the same sort of sound. Now, the great thing about a reverb time around about sort of 2 seconds, it's pretty inoffensive and it tends to get out of the way, especially if you're playing in a large room. But it's still big enough to give you some ambience. Now, like delays, what I tend to do with reverbs is to reduce the frequency in the reverb, as what I want to do is to get that reverb away from the initial guitar tone. Now with this reverb here, we're using a shelf, but again, let's bring it back. I'm guessing this is going to be around about sort of 5K. And if we bring the gain all the way back, you'll see what we've done subtly is just to reduce those high frequencies. And again, we'll do the same with the low frequencies, so just to reduce the low frequencies. Now that's just the reverb on its own. If I add the delay before it, so turn the delay on. Sounds like that. Now, if I mute both of those, play exact same thing. And now bring it in. To me, that makes all the difference. Now, one of the great things about using these sort of settings and the delays and the reverbs that far back in the mix is that when you're using things like overdrives, they sound great as well. So you can use these sort of settings with either an overdriven tone or a clean tone. For me, there is another sort of reverb which I use all the time, and that's like a modulated reverb or a shimmer reverb. So if I turn off the delay and the reverb here. Now what I'm going to use for this is Valhalla Shimmer. Now this is what Valhalla considered to be a shimmer reverb. I think what most people and companies consider to be a shimmer reverb is a reverb with pitch in it. This doesn't really do that. It's more like a modulated reverb, but it does sound absolutely awesome. Right, if I turn this on, now to me, this is the best sounding modulated stroke sort of shimmer reverb that you can get. I wish they had something this good inside the Cortex, but unfortunately they don't. All of the reverbs don't even compare anywhere near to this. And I wish Valhalla would bring this out in a pedal. And if anyone knows of any pedals that sound like this, please let me know, because I'd love to check them out. The great thing about a reverb like this is it's a textural reverb, so you can use it, I would say, sparingly in a mix. So if you've got a track or you're playing live and there's not a lot going on, you can use a reverb like this to really fill out the sound. Now, personally, I bring the mix back just a little bit on that, but the sound is absolutely perfect apart from that. So it almost adds this sort of pad sound to your guitar. With a reverb like this, it can get a bit too much. You really need to use the dynamics with your playing to play the reverb. Otherwise, the reverb will end up sort of playing you. And what I mean by that is, if I overplay, you can hear all of the notes or the decays of the notes crashing into each other. And sometimes that's great, but I think a lot of the time with a reverb like this, you need to play a lot more sparingly with a lot more dynamics. So if you want a note to poke out and you want that note to carry over to the next chord, you play that one a little bit harder. But the other notes, maybe you want them back in the mix a little bit, you just play them a bit softer. Now what I mean by that is something like this. So there you go. I really hope you guys got something out of that. So as a rule, if you're using sort of small ambient reverbs or reverbs you want to fit in the mix, I would keep the reverb down to about 2 seconds, cut the lows and the highs so they are reduced in frequency lower than the initial guitar tone. That way everything sort of fits in the mix a lot better. Same with delays. Now, as a rule, if I had a delay pedal in front of me or a multi-effects and I wanted to get up a quick sound, 400 milliseconds, cut the lows, cut the highs to about, I guess, 2K, 3K, 2K, something like that, and cut the lows to about 400 Hertz. Everything will fit in the mix so much better, and your guitar will cut through other instruments so much better as well. Anyway, I really hope you guys got something out of this. If you did get something out of it, don't forget to like and subscribe, click on the bell button, and you'll be notified of any future video that comes out from the Studio Rats. I'm Paul, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.